It's the Minnesota Frost and the New York Sirens. Welcome aboard, ladies and gentlemen, to PWHL Recap. Today, we're talking Frost versus Sirens. First, showdown of the 2025-2026 regular season. Let's get on with it. Welcome to Sports for Beginners. This is the show where I cover the Pittsburgh Penguins, Toronto Blue Jays, and take you on a journey through the world of sports. From the fans' perspective, here is your host, Scott McGregor. Let's have some fun. How's it going, PWHL fans? I'm your host, Scott, and my goodness, what a first matchup we've got here between the two-time defending Walter Cup champion Minnesota Frost and the New York Sirens. This is the first of 5 meetings between these two teams this season, and boy, oh boy, did we have a good old time at the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey, the site of this game. Before we get down to business, giving you a look at our head coaches, the matchup in goal, and the officiating crew to kick us off here, let's give you a look at our current records going into game day as the Minnesota Frost entered with a record 5-1-2-3. The New York Sirens opened up with a record of 6-0 heading into their first matchup against the Frost. As we bring up a shared screen, I want to talk about a few things to note from the primer just before we get started. A few things to note before we get started with the primer. First and foremost, the Minnesota Frost started this game in second place in the league with a 5-1-2-3-1-2 with a 5-1-2-3 record. Their top scorer was Britta Curl Somali. Britta Curl S. Sorry about that, Britta. They also were coming off of a 6-2 victory over the Seattle Torrent on January 11th. Britta has 11 games played, 4 goals, 9 assists, and 13 points. The top goal scorer for the New York Sirens was Kristina Katalinikova. I'm going to go with KK. Sorry about that if I pronounced the name wrong. New York is 6-0-0-5 heading into this game with 18 points. 11 games played by KK. Kristina Katalinikova, 7 goals, 7 points. No assists for her in her 11 games played. The New York Sirens coming off a 2-0 shutout win on January 6th over the Toronto Sceptres. And one more thing to note here before we get into this game. Last time these two teams met, the New York Sirens won 14. They won 14 in 4 points against Minnesota in the 2024-2025 season. Minnesota won 9 of 6 in 2024-2025 season, with final scores favoring Minnesota and New York. New York in overtime, 4-3. In a shootout, 4-3 as well. Those were on December 1st, December 22nd, and 0 in regulation on January 4th. On January 15th last season, New York also won in a shootout for the second straight time. Down in Detroit on March 16th, New York beat Minnesota 4-1, and they also beat Minnesota on April 20th. This is the first regular season of 5 regular season meetings between the teams this season, following a pair of preseason scrimmages at Code Arena in November. Last season, the New York Sirens went 3-2-1-0 against Minnesota, with both games at Prudential Center split and decided by a shootout. New York was the only team that the Frost did not beat in regulation last year. So these guys were the only team that, as you would expect, Minnesota did not beat in regulation. Let's take a look at our head coaches now, starting with the New York Sirens. They're head coached by Greg Fargo, and they're going up against the two-time defending Walter Cup champion Minnesota Frost, who are coached by Ken Klee. Sorry, Ken, if I'm pronouncing the last name wrong. I'm trying to get it right as I go along. Minnesota's record in the last two seasons, head-to-head against New York, is 4-4-2-1 at the start of this game. The Sirens are 7-2-1-1 head-to-head against New York. Heading into this one, it is Ken Klee, there we go, that makes sense, against Greg Fargo. And with that said, we're almost at our first break of the show. We're almost at the first break of this program, but as we get there, we're going to take a look at the officiating crew and go between the pipes. Speaking of going between the pipes, let's go between the pipes before we get to revealing our officiating crew. Who are the officiators? We're going to find out in just a few seconds. But first, let's dive into our tending matchup. Starting off with, as we did when we did the head coaches, Greg Fargo's New York Sirens. The New York Sirens will send to the pipes, between the pipes, they will send number 82, Kaylee Osborne, to the goal. She is backed up by number 37, Kaylee Shanahan, who would be in backup if needed for the New York Sirens. Over on the Minnesota Frost side, getting the start between the pipes, would be number 29, Nicole Hensley. She would be backed up by number 1 of the Minnesota Frost, Marlene Borsanault. Marlene Borsanault. Sorry to the PWHL fans of the Minnesota Frost if I have pronounced the name incorrectly. I'm trying to pronounce names correctly as we go. So if I pronounce anybody's name wrong, my sincerest apologies. Moving on, let's get to the officiating crew before we go to break number 1 of the program. Let's go to our first break of the program after we get to our officiators. So here we go. The officiating crew for this game would be Shauna Neary, wearing the number 49 as one of our referees on the ice in this one. Also officiating this game would be wearing the number 33 as our referees, Shauna Neary wearing number 49, and Brandy Beecroft wearing the number 33. The linesman, or in the women's game, linesperson, would be number 98, Matthew Williams, and number 95 would also be out there officiating this game. All right, attendance record, start time Eastern and end time Eastern coming up a little bit later, but when we return to PWHL Recap, when we return, we will talk how this game winded up going into overtime, penalties, and scoring. Plus, we'll get you a look at our 3 stars of the contest and the game totals. We also will have the women's hockey player of the game and the play of the game revealed. And later in the show, before the show is up, we will set the scene for what is to come on PWHL Recap, as well as what's coming up across the PWHL. Spoiler alert, there is one game on the slate today as we record this, and that is featuring the Vancouver Golden Eyes against the Toronto Sceptres. Puck drops at 3 p.m. Eastern. Stick with us, more from the Frost versus Sirens game, including the game breakdown, which is next when we return. Don't go anywhere. There's more great conversations and content right around the corner. Sports for Beginners will be right back in a moment.
Cianity Radio will never give you up. They will never let you down, nor will they run around or desert you. So join Nick Astley for The Melting Pot every Saturday on CNT Radio. Hang on a minute. He's not Nick Astley. Oh, jings, I've done it wrong. Anyway, just join Nick for The Melting Pot on CNT Radio.
Hey everyone, it's Scott McGregor here. Join me weekly right here on Sports for Beginners for weekly episodes, your weekly dive in around sports news surrounding the Toronto Blue Jays, Pittsburgh Penguins, Toronto Raptors, and more. We'll have guests on a week-to-week basis and so much more. Lots of great conversations coming. Be sure to subscribe to our show so you never miss an episode. And with that, make sure to like our Facebook page, Sports for Beginners Podcast 87. Just type that into your browser, and you should be sure to find our Facebook page. We'll also provide bonus content. It's going to be a dull moment you'll never want to miss. Check out Sports for Beginners with me weekly for daily news around the sports league, surrounding my favorite sports teams and yours, and so much more. Until then, we'll see you at action time.
Take another look with Gerda Felix and Melanie Taddeo Malo. Two powerful women of diverse backgrounds having genuine, unique, and uncomfortable conversations that everyone needs to have. Join Melanie and Gerda for conversations about what is missing from human connections.
Now, let's take you back to the action. To the rink and field we go. We find Scott McGregor.
We welcome you back to PWHL Recap. Before we get back down to business, I want to remind you that in case you missed it, we have some action to get to coming up at 3 p.m. Eastern. The Vancouver Golden Eyes and the Toronto Sceptres doing battle later this afternoon. So be sure you check it out. That's the Golden Eyes and the Toronto Sceptres duking it out later this afternoon as we record this here on a Saturday, January 2026. And that is just one of the main objectives of our program here. We're keeping an eye on that. But back to the matter at hand. Minnesota versus New York. In case you missed it earlier, we talked about the coaching matchup, previewed the netminders as well as the officiating crew, and let you know that this was the first of 5 meetings between the two squads this season. We also went down memory lane a little bit into 2024-2025's regular season. But now it's time to get down to the bread and butter of the game. Let's get to it. Here we go. And I have here on my phone as well with us the same notes to get us rolling. Here we go, and we will follow those notes as well as we go along. So here we go. It's White the action for the PWHL between Minnesota and Toronto, Minnesota and New York. I was going to say Toronto. Oops. Almost made a back check there, but that's okay. So we'll begin with our penalty summary for the game stats not stats of the game. I should say that's coming up a little bit later, but the game breakdown. We'll begin with our penalties. Just a quick note, overtime and the second period had no penalties whatsoever in the hockey game. However, both teams took at least one penalty in the contest in the first period of play. The first one went to Minnesota, which would go to May Bafferson, 2-minute minor for tripping at 13 minutes 58 seconds. By this time, Minnesota was ahead 1-0. We'll get to the goals in the first period in a second. Also around this time, at 15 minutes 36 seconds, the New York Sirens take their only penalty of the game's first period, which went to Maddie Wheeler, number 18 of the New York Sirens, not the Minnesota Frost, number 18. Maddie Wheeler going to the box 2 minutes for cross-checking at 15 minutes 36 seconds. By this time, still Minnesota in front 1-0. Before we jump to the second period, and of course we'll get to the third period penalty in a second, let's go to our first period scoring. In the first period, both teams score once, hence our final score after the first 20 minutes of play, 1-1. First, it was Minnesota who came up with a bang at 8 minutes and 55 seconds. Britta Curl Salme, Britta Curl S, her 5th goal of the season, assisted by number 27, her 9th assist of the season. Minnesota takes a 1. At the time the game was going on last night, it was an empty net goal, but it's actually an even strength goal nonetheless. During the Maddie Wheeler cross-checking penalty, Casey O'Brien scores a short-handed goal alert. This would be a jailbreak goal for Casey O'Brien to put New York on the board at 16 minutes and 24 seconds. Her 4th goal of the season. Number 10, Sarah Fillier, her 4th assist of the season. Jailbreak. Casey O'Brien, number 26 of the New York Sirens, able to get the game even before the end of the first 20 minutes of play with her 4th goal of the season. 4th assist of the season for Sarah Fillier, as we are knotted up at a goal apiece heading to the second period of play. We would remain knotted up at 2 goals apiece after the second period of play. We'll get to the shots on goal by period coming up shortly after we're through our game breakdown. Just like the overtime period and the second period, there were no goals scored in the third period of play, just as there were no penalties called in the second period nor the overtime period of play were there any penalties called. So, how did we go in the second period scoring? Well, Kelly Panic, with her 5th goal of the season, puts Minnesota back in front 35 seconds into the second period. Grace Zumwinkle, number 13, her 1st assist of the season. And Minnesota captain Kendall Coyne Schofield picks up her 5th assist of the season as Minnesota jumps ahead 2-1. But later in the second period, 4 minutes and 4 seconds later, Taylor Girardi, her 5th goal of the season, Micah Zandihart picks up her 2nd assist of the season, quickly tying things up at 2-2. The game would go into the third period tied up at 2 after the Taylor Girard goal. Taylor wearing the number 17. The number 28 is worn by Mika Zandihart. And over for the Minnesota goal there, number 12 for Kelly Panic, number 13 for Grace Zumwinkle, and number 26 for Kendall Coyne Schofield. Speaking of Kendall Coyne Schofield, she would score 52 seconds into overtime to end the game, but before we get there, let's round out the penalty summary, going to the final penalty of the game called, which would be the second and final penalty the New York Sirens would take, which went to number 14, Jamie Bourbones. 2 minutes for hooking, time of the penalty, 2 minutes, 6 seconds into the third. So both Minnesota and New York go to the penalty kill and power play at least once, but Minnesota with the extra power play opportunity in the third period of play. Again, no overtime penalties resulted, no second period penalties resulted in this game. Let's go to overtime, still tied at 2-2 after regulation. In overtime, we mentioned Kendall Coyne-Schofield. She picks up her 9th goal of the season to win the game for Minnesota in overtime, 3-2. With her 9th goal of the season, Kendall Coyne-Schofield beating the goaltender on Greg Fargo's side, Kaylee Osborne. On the assist was Taylor. Her 10th assist of the season, second assist of the day, as this was a night game, so second assist of the night. Time of the goal, 52 seconds in. Minnesota wins this game 3-2 in overtime. Time now to look at the shots on goal for the period, and of course we'll get to power plays as well. We know the final score was 3-2, but how did we do in other categories? Well, shots on goal were tied 8-8 at the end of 20 minutes of play. Frost and Sirens even at a goal apiece after that timeline. After the second period of play, it was the Sirens coming out on top, 17-16 for the game, and outshooting the Frost 9-8 in the second period of play. Again, we're tied, but this time it's after regulation. Both teams wind up with 9 shots on goal, but the Frost are being outshot 26-25, but both teams get a total of 9 shots on goal in the third period. Still tied at 2 goals apiece as we enter overtime. Minnesota with the only shot on goal in overtime, coming off the stick of Kendall Coyne-Schofield. Ultimately, the final shots would be 26-26. Minnesota would get the win, 3-2, with the only shot in overtime being the game-winning goal, scored by Kendall Coyne-Schofield. Both teams on the power play were non-existent. Minnesota 0 for 2, which means the New York Sirens went 2 for 2 on the penalty kill. Minnesota, however, on the penalty kill, 1 for 1. The New York Sirens, 0 for 1, 0 for 1 in this one. Despite losing the game in overtime, they only had 1 shot on the power play. Minnesota had 2, and Minnesota did not capitalize on any of the power play opportunities, but neither did New York. Both teams spent 2 minutes in the box each. Not Minnesota. The New York Sirens spending 4 minutes in the box, so an extra 2 minutes in the box because they went to the box twice. Over on points, they had 2 goals, 2 assists for 4 points. 3 goals, 4 assists for Minnesota, which equals 7 points for them in this one. All right, game breakdown done. Game totals in the books. No area to look at how the teams did here today on the face-off. But you know what? That's okay. We'll move right along. It is time now for your 3 stars of the game. And as we continue to stay on a shared screen, if you listen to Penguins post-game here on our program, on Sports for Beginners, the podcast, you'll know that it is brought to you by the respective sponsors on the Penguins TV and radio network, as well as their opponents' respective TV and radio network. With that said, let's go back to the PWHL tab here that I have on and reveal those to you. We don't have a sponsor for the 3 stars of the game, but we could have it down the road. Your 3rd star went to Frost goaltender Nicole Hensley, 26 shots against, 24 saves. She allowed 2 goals in this game, but did enough to get the win. Your 2nd star went to New York Sirens forward Casey O'Brien, 1 goal, no assists. And your 1st star went to the Frost captain, number 26, Kendall Coyne-Schofield, 1 goal, 1 assist. So your 1st star was Kendall Coyne-Schofield. Your 2nd star is Casey O'Brien of the New York Sirens. And your 3rd star, also on the Minnesota side, Nicole Hensley. Number 29, Nicole Hensley. Number 26, Casey O'Brien. And number 26, Kendall Coyne-Schofield. Your 3 stars of the game. have a difference in opinion, let us know on our WhatsApp group chat, our Discord server, or let us know via email, sportsforbeginnerspodcast8231@gmail.com. Again, that's sportsforbeginnerspodcast8231@gmail.com. If you want to get in on all the action, the Women's Hockey Player of the Game is coming up very shortly, so be sure you stick with us. But once again, want to remind you as we enter into that commercial break, which will get us to our play of the game and the Women's Hockey Player of the Game coming up in our next segment. I want to remind you that we will also take a look during this segment. We will also take a look at what's to come over the course of the rest of this PWHL week into the week of Tuesday, January 20th, 2026, and so on and so forth. And then when we come back after the second timeout following the play of the game and the Women's Hockey Player of the Game, which are coming up next for you here on this show, we'll remind you who's next for the PWHL Recap coverage on Sports for Beginners, as well as set the scene for the upcoming Minnesota Frost and New York Sirens opponents. And with that said, we'll take a break. When we come back, it's time for the play of the game to be revealed, plus the Women's Hockey Player of the Game is revealed, and we'll take a look at what else is coming up this weekend in PWHL land, as well as what else is coming up starting on Tuesday, January 20th, 2026. We'll also reveal to you when Minnesota and New York will play once again in meeting number 2 of 5 between the two squads. So be sure to stick with us, because faster than a speeding comet, you will get the play of the game, the Women's Hockey Player of the Game, and then it will be time to look around the league. Maybe get a look at the post game and get a look at some of the quotes after the game. But that is next when we continue on PWHL Recap. Stay with us. Don't go anywhere. There's more great conversations and content right around the corner. Sports for Beginners will be right back in a moment.
Take another look with Gerda Felix and Melanie Taddeo Malo, two powerful women of diverse backgrounds having genuine, unique, and uncomfortable conversations that everyone needs to have. Join Melanie and Gerda for conversations about what is missing from human connections.
Hi, Scott. It's Ali here. I just wanted to mention that I'm really enjoying the show, and I'm really enjoying what you're putting together. And I wanted to just say I'm enjoying being a part of it as well. So please keep up the phenomenal work, and make sure you guys keep this podcast going, because it really suits you well. I wonder if I could make it. It's almost getting to 8 o'clock p.m., and I am still a few more steps away from home to get to my computer to listen to CNT Radio's Cosmopolitan Culture Club. The best of the best music from around the world. Can't wait. I think I made it. CNT Radio, making your day brighter, one song at a time. Now, let's take you back to the action. To the rink and field we go. We find Scott McGregor.
It continues on PWHL Recap. It is about that time to get down to business. We're talking women's hockey, the PWHL, our topic of conversation, the Minnesota Frost and the New York Sirens. The Frost did not beat the New York Sirens in regulation last season. But this is a start for the New York Sirens to be beat by Minnesota. Before we jump to our play of the game and the women's hockey player of the game, let's quickly look around the league at action from January's schedule so far, specifically going back to Tuesday, January the 6th, where we had quite a number of games play out, and we have a few games still on the schedule into tomorrow, Sunday, that will play out. We start off with the New York Sirens defeating the Toronto Sceptres 2-0 on January 6th from the Coca-Cola Coliseum. On Wednesday, January the 7th, the Boston Fleet defeated the Seattle Torrent 2-1 at Agganis Arena in Boston. Boston would eventually play Toronto before we get to the week that we are currently in, Tuesday, January 13th to Sunday, January 18th. But before that, on Friday, January the 9th, the Ottawa Charge defeated the Vancouver Golden Eyes 4-2 from TD Place in Ottawa, Ontario. The Ottawa Charge also defeated from the Scotiabank Centre in Halifax. The Charge also defeated the Fleet in a shootout 2-1. The Torrent, coming off of their game against Boston, lost 6-2 to the Minnesota Frost at the Grand Casino Arena in St. Paul on Sunday, January 11th. Boston took on Ottawa and lost in a shootout at the Scotiabank Centre in Halifax. And also on that day, the Montreal Victoire shut out the Vancouver Golden Eyes 1-0 from the Videotron Centre in Quebec City. Now to the current week we were in. On Tuesday, January 13th, the Montreal Victoire defeated the Ottawa Charge 2-1 in Place Bell from Laval. On Wednesday, January 14th, the Boston Fleet defeated the Toronto Sceptres 2-1 from the Tsonga Center in Lowell, Massachusetts. And last night, as we record this game, the Minnesota Frost defeated the New York Sirens 3-2 from the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey. Still to come, under 2 hours from now, from Scotiabank Arena in Toronto, Ontario, we have the Toronto Sceptres hosting the Vancouver Golden Eyes. Puck drops at 3 p.m. Eastern. Then we have a Sunday doubleheader, as it will feature the Montreal Victoire against the New York Sirens from Capital One Arena in Washington, Massachusetts. Fans can catch this game tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern in Canada on CBC and CBC Television, as well as CBC Gem. You can also catch this game on MSG in the New York area, and of course another station called the Monumental Sports Network, who has rights to this game. Puck drops at 2 p.m. Eastern between the Sirens and the Victoire. Watch it on CBC Television and CBC, as well as CBC Gem. New York viewers can catch it on MSG. Viewers within the Washington area can catch this on Momentum Sports Network. It is live from the home of the Washington Capitals, Capital One Arena, at 2 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. Then at 10 p.m. Eastern, live from the home of the Seattle Kraken, it's the Seattle Torrent taking on the Boston Fleet. Fans in Canada can watch this game on Sportsnet, and fans in the Massachusetts area can catch it on the New England Sports Network, NESN. If you're tuning in internationally, you can catch it on the YouTube channel for the PWHL, all these games. And you can also watch the game while you look at the game scoreboards on the PWHL website. But avoid where prohibited. We'll go to Tuesday, January 20th, and so on and so forth in just a little bit, as well as we set the scene for Minnesota and New York, their next meeting, and of course, who they will play next. But first, it's time for the play of the game. Brought to you by on our Penguin shows. If we had a sponsor, we don't have a sponsor, but brought to you by, if you listen to the Penguin shows that I've done in the past, the respective sponsors for the Pittsburgh Penguins radio and TV network. Speaking of the Pittsburgh Penguins, they will be doing battle tonight against the Columbus Blue Jackets. we will have a post-game show for you following Bills post-game, Bills and the Broncos. The winner goes on to Championship Sunday in the AFC Championship game against either Houston or New England. Meanwhile, on the NFC, the other games going on, we have the winner of Seahawks winners going up against the winner of Rams Bears. The Rams and the Bears at 6:30 tomorrow p.m. Eastern. At 3 p.m. tomorrow, it's the Texans and the Patriots. Today, coming up at 4:30 p.m., it's the Bills and the Broncos, followed later at 8 p.m. Eastern by Seahawks. Stay tuned on Bills postgame for a recap of Saturday's games to our women's hockey player of the game. Let's do the play of the game. The honors of providing our play of the game, but since there is no guest with us, it comes courtesy of the host, Scott McGregor. That's myself. And for me, my play of the game is going on the New York Sirens side. I love that assertiveness from Taylor Girardi. Really made it tough. I think she really made it tough for Minnesota to go up 3-0, 4-0, or whatever it would have been at the time. But I feel like Taylor played her cards right and was able to get the game-tying goal in the second period, and that is good enough for my play of the game. Again, no goals were scored in the third. We had a goal in overtime, which ultimately won the game. That was Kendall Coyne-Schofield. The other goals scored by Minnesota were by Kelly Panic and Britta Curl S. And the other goal scored by New York in this one, Casey O'Brien. The attendance record, which was 4,244 fans in attendance for a game that started 10 minutes after 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Mountain, midnight in the UK, and 10 minutes after 1 in the morning in France and Sweden. The game also ended at 41 minutes after 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Mountain, a.m. UK time, and 3 a.m. France and Sweden time. It took 2 hours and 31 minutes to complete. And once again, you can see our 3 stars of the game are up there as well. And it's time for our final timeout of our show. Today, I'm feeling like we're going to give 2 out, 1 to a side. And the first person that's going to get one is going to go on the hometown New York Sirens. And we're going to go to Kristen O'Neill. Yes, Kristen didn't score a goal in this game, but I still feel like she did everything she could to... Don't go anywhere. There's more great conversations and content right around the corner. Sports for Beginners will be right back in a moment.
CNT Radio will never give you up. They will never let you down, nor will they run around or desert you. So join Nick Astley for The Melting Pot every Saturday on CNT Radio. Hang on a minute. He's not Nick Astley. Oh, jings, I've done it wrong. Anyway, just join Nick for The Melting Pot on CNT Radio.
Now, let's take you back to the action. To the rink and field we go. We find Scott McGregor.
Okay, folks, sorry about that. We were disconnected during the Women's Hockey Player of the Game, but you know what? It's fine. It will take us to the end of the show anyways. In case you missed it during the technical issues there, I mentioned that our play of the game was going to go to goal scorer Taylor Girardi. And of course, our women's hockey player of the game of the New York Sirens is going to go to Kristen O'Neill. Now, Kristen O'Neill, she had a pretty good game. She didn't score a goal in this game, but I still think she had a pretty good game. 4 shots on goal for Kristen O'Neill. Yeah, that's pretty good. Speaking of goaltenders, honorable mention to Kaylee Osborne. Kristen O'Neill with our Women's Hockey Player of the Game for the Sirens. An honorable mention to this goal scorer, who had 4 shots on goal. It is the captain herself of the Minnesota Frost, Kendall Coyne-Schofield, but the goaltender Nicole Hensley, 2 goals given up, 60 minutes and 40 seconds played on the ice, 24 saves out of 26 shots against her. Nicole Hensley is your Women's Hockey Player of the Game recipient for the Minnesota Frost. And that, ladies and gentlemen, will just about do it for us sharing our screen. But before we go, even though we're not sharing our screen anymore, before we go, want to let you know that coming up momentarily, we have the Vancouver Golden Eyes taking on the Toronto Sceptres from the Scotiabank Arena in Toronto, Ontario on Sportsnet. You can watch it on Sportsnet. Viewers in Canada, also available on PWHL YouTube and, of course, the PWHL website. Tomorrow, the New York Sirens will take on the Montreal Victoire from Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C. Fans in Canada can catch the game in en français and in English on CBC and CBC Television and CBC Gem. You can also catch the game on Monumental Sports Network as well as MSG. Puck drops at 2 p.m. Eastern. Then the nightcap of Sunday's doubleheader is the Boston Fleet and the Seattle Torrent from Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle, Washington. All games are viewable on the PWHL website as well as the PWHL YouTube channel. And viewers watching on TV in Canada can catch this one on Sportsnet. Viewers in the Massachusetts area in Boston, you can catch this one on the New England Sports Network, NESN. Coverage starts at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. As for the New York Sirens, before we go to Minnesota Frost, their next game will be against the Montreal Victoire as they continue a 3-game homestand with a neutral site game on Sunday against Montreal at Capital One Arena from Washington, D.C., the home of the Washington Capitals of the NHL. On Tuesday night, January 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern, they will host the Ottawa Charge from the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey. You can catch it on MSG Sportsnet 2, as well as for viewers in Canada on Prime. It's on Tuesday. It's only on Prime. That will wrap up a 2-game homestand for the New York Sirens, and they will wrap up January on the road with a showdown against the Minnesota Frost from the Grand Casino Arena in St. Paul on Sunday, January 25th. 2025 at 3 p.m. Eastern, available on Sportsnet, MSG, and the FanDuel Sports Network. And the next time they will be on TSN will be on Wednesday, January 28th, when they battle in a 2-game road trip that ends the month of January before one quick game in February and then the Olympic break, which will be a home game. They will wrap up their 2-game road trip at the Tsonga Center in Lowell against the New York Sirens. The Sirens will wrap it up with the Boston Fleet, hosting them from the Tsonga Center in Lowell, Massachusetts. Fans in Canada can catch that game at 7 p.m. Eastern on TSN. In the Massachusetts area, you can catch it on the New England Sports Network, NESN, and you can also catch the game on MSG if you're in the New York area. For the Minnesota Frost, they have a couple of games here, 3 games left on their slate of January. All are at home. First, it will be against from the Grand Casino Arena in St. Paul on Wednesday, January 21st at 7 p.m. Eastern. Then on Sunday, January 25th at 3 p.m. Eastern, Minnesota from the Grand Casino Arena in St. Paul will take on the New York Sirens one more time, the second time the 2 teams will meet, and they'll wrap it up at 9 p.m. Eastern, Wednesday night, January 28th, with a showdown against the Vancouver Golden Eyes. All 3 of those games from the Grand Casino Arena in St. Paul, Minnesota. 2 of those games Canada viewers can catch on RDS and, of course, Both of those two games can be caught on TSN and the FanDuel Sports Network. All of those games can be caught on the FanDuel Sports Network. The game on Sunday will be on Sportsnet for Canadian viewers, as well as MSG and FanDuel Sports Network. And then, of course, Minnesota's only game. They actually don't have a game in February. They will hit the Olympic break after January schedule concludes and be back in action on a 2-game road trip beginning in Montreal and then heading into Toronto to kick off March. So they will not play in February, but they will play in March. So after their January schedule wraps up, the Minnesota Frost's January schedule wraps up, they will be on the break for the Olympics and not be in action. As for our next PWHL recap, that will feature one of these two teams, Minnesota and New York, and that will be one of the last days before the PWHL hits the Olympic break. We'll be coming at you live on Wednesday night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. We'll come your way right after that game as we check out the Montreal Victoire against the Toronto Sceptres. Game time on Wednesday, January 28th, 2026 at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. 5:30 p.m. Central, 3:30 p.m. Pacific, 4:30 p.m. Mountain, 11:30 K time, midnight France and Sweden time. Of course, that is 12:30 a.m. France and Sweden time, 11:30 p.m. UK time. Toronto and Montreal from Place Bell in Laval is next time on PWHL Recap. So be sure to check it out when it comes your way. All right. Well, folks, that is going to do it for this episode of PWHL Recap. We'll catch up with you following Victoire versus Sceptres on Wednesday, January the 28th, 2026. But that is going to do it for us. Thank you so much for joining us. If you like what you're listening to, click subscribe if you really like it. Hit that like button so you never miss an episode, whether it's the Minnesota Frost and the New York Sirens or any of the other games that we cover here on our show. Tell all your friends. We got a football game and then another hockey game to get ready for here on Sports for Beginners, the podcast. Sceptres, Troy Ryan versus Corey Chevry next time right here on PWHL Recap. Talk to you then, PWHL fans, and always remember, ice time earned. The Minnesota Frost defeat the New York Sirens 3-2 in overtime. What will meeting number 2 have in store? We'll find out later this month. That's it for us. Thank you for joining us. Ice time earned, and we'll catch up with you after Sceptres Victoire. Until then, thank you so much for being with us, and we'll talk to you on Wednesday, January 28th. Stick with you. Then, I should say, check you there. Thank you so much for listening to Sports for Beginners. If you would like to learn more about the show, you can visit the podcast Facebook page or visit the official website. You can also send us an email at sportsforbeginnerspodcast8231@gmail.com. As we always remind you, it is not goodbye, it is until next time.